Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and another tutorial. Today I'm going to sew along with you the Winterberry wallet by Blue Calla Patterns. Let me show you some of the amazing features of this bag. Now it is a larger wallet. It's almost a clutch size. You can see it's rather thick. On the front you have a magnetic tab here and this really cute decorative swoopy slip pocket. A smaller cell phone may fit in here. My iPhone 13 Pro Max doesn't. It's just way too big. But this is a great place to keep things that you need easy access to, and it's held securely with that snap. On the back, we have a zipper pocket. On the top, we have another zipper pocket. And when you open it up, it lays flat and is held together by two magnetic snaps. We have 12 card slots and 2 slip pockets. So there is a lot going on with this wallet. Things I learned doing this tutorial, or making this tutorial, I did this in a vinyl exterior. I'm not gonna lie, it was tough to turn. It was a real arm workout. Going forward, if I were to make another one, I wouldn't do the whole, I used really thick vinyls, mind you, as well. This one is the Obsidian Pearl vinyl from Galaxy Customs. This one here is the Dice Mormino. I don't remember what it's called. It's the Mormino vinyl. Yeah, I would say if you wanted to do a vinyl and cotton together, I would do like a decorative here maybe, or like either this panel on vinyl, this one in cotton, or vice versa, because it does get super thick. Not so much for the industrial machine. The machine could sew through it fine. It was when it came to actually turning this through. Stuff I used in this bag. I already said the vinyls I used. These awesome dice pulls I got from RC Threadcraft. My zipper is from Blue Calla. My magnetic snaps are from Emmeline bags. My lining is just two blender fabrics from Fabricland. Interfacings in this bag. The exterior, the pattern calls for Decaville Light. I used EB Fuse Heavy for anywhere that there was Decaville Light. I will tell you, if you decide to do the exterior in vinyl, I don't think that you need to put the Decaville Light or the EB Fuse Heavy in if it's a thicker vinyl. I think if I'd left mine out, I would have had a little easier time of turning, but it still would have held its shape. There is a main stabilizer in here as well of Peltex that you slip in the end. All of my cotton pieces are backed with EB Fuse Light, which is a medium woven interfacing. What else? I use Giardini edge paint for all of my tabs. There are instructions in the pattern for how to do it like I did. Also, if you're doing it in cotton, there are instructions in there how to do the tabs that way with no raw edges. What else? Again, another amazing Blue Calla pattern. I can never rave enough about Celine's patterns. They're always amazing. Don't think I'm forgetting anything, but if I am, we'll touch base on it in the tutorial, and I will see you guys on the other side.
You're going to need some number 5 zipper tape, 2 number 5 zipper pulls, a 14 and an 18 millimeter magnetic snap, as well as your nameplate if you're using one. My main stabilizer I'm using is Peltex, so the 2 pieces there. Our main piece, you're going to be doing your pattern pieces in 2 ways. You have your main piece cut out of your exterior. You're going to do a mirrored image of that folded at the line of your lining, and that is backed with woven interfacing. And on the back of your main piece, I have my EB Fuse Heavy or Decaville Light, and I've also cut out the rectangle for that in the back as per the pattern piece. Okay, you got your curved band, your zipper band, your main slip pocket piece backed with EB Fuse Heavy, your main lining piece, your 2 zipper pocket lining pieces, your 2 main lining pieces, zipper pocket lining for the big zipper pocket, your 2 card slot pieces with medium woven interfacing outside of the seam allowances, 2 uninterfaced zipper tabs, your zipper facing backed with woven interfacing, 4 of the interior tabs. 2 of them are backed with Peltex outside of the seam allowances. Your main front tab, 1 of them backed with Peltex outside of the seam allowances. Okay, so we're going to start by working on our tabs. You're going to go ahead on the 1 of the large tabs and the 2 small tabs. All the tabs that have the Peltex on the back, we are going to install the side of the magnetic snap. So what I've done is I've just poked a little hole in the marking of where our snap is going to be installed and go ahead and install it in all 3 of those. All right, so I'm doing a raw edge way of doing these tabs. So I'm going to take some double-sided tape outside of the seam allowance and stick them on one piece. Then I'm going to take the opposite side that isn't interfaced, and I am going to put these together, right or wrong sides together, as close as I possibly can. This doesn't have to be exact, as we will be trimming this up quite a bit to make them even, but try to get them as even as you possibly can. You'll do the same with the 2 smaller ones. Okay, so now that that is done, what we're going to do is we're going to go around the 2 side edges and the curved edges with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm also just going to base the top straight edge with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance just to hold my pieces together better. So again, that's 3/8 of an inch seam allowance around the 2 long straight edges and the bottom curved edge. Now you'll see I am hand cranking around my corner here. This is a habit that I have gotten into to try to make my curves perfect. Being on an industrial machine, I find that it just gives me just that little bit more control as the machine goes so fast to get that perfect curve. Do the same with the 2 smaller tabs. Okay, so now that that's done, what we're going to do is we're going to trim the 2 long sides and the curved sides down to approximately an 1/8 of an inch away from our stitching line. Do not trim the short straight edge, just those 3 sides. I'm going to go ahead and Giardini edge paint these. If you need a class on that, it's down in the description. Okay, so let's work on these card slots. I'm going to show you one. Both card slot pieces are done in the same way. From each end, mark bottom on one end and top on the other. From the bottom, measure up your first line, which is 2 1/8 inch. From there, you're going to measure 3 4-inch lines from one another, giving us a total of 4 lines. You will do the same on the other piece. Again, remember, you're starting from the bottom. Okay, now at the sewing, or not the iron here, so from the bottom at that first line, wrong sides together, I am using my, I like to use a piece of cardstock to do this. I'm just going ahead at all of those lines and making creases at those marks. The cardstock just helps get it nice and crisp, and when you're kind of going blind when the mark is on the wrong side, it just helps a little bit to know that you're getting it nice and straight as possible. Okay, and then from here, underneath, not the bottom fold of the 2 1/8, but the other 3 folds, we're going to measure down a 1/2 inch from each of those folds. Just a little mark on either side of it. And this is like ingenious. It makes it so easy for making the card slot. So you're going to take that first fold and you are going to line it up with those 1/2 inch lines and give it a press. Take the next fold, do the same up to the next 1/2 inch lines and give it a press. So super easy. And continue with the next fold, same thing. Up into those 1/2 inch lines and give it a good press. And we have perfection. And then you can kind of fold the other one to the back like so. So we have a finished backside as well, and give the whole thing a super good press. Do the same with the other side. Now just double check that your credit cards do fit in there and go in good, which mine do. And now we are going to top stitch all 4 of these folded edges. So start with the top one. Once you're done that one, what you want to do is kind of take that one you just did and fold it to the back. Just let it fall to the back like so, and then that gives you access to top stitch the next one, and you will do the same with the next 2 folds. You will repeat the exact same process with the other card slot panel. Okay, now we are going to go and just kind of baste down the sides just to hold those card slots in place, just with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Sorry, I'm going in with more than 1/8 of an inch. I believe I'm going in with the 3/8 of an inch here. Double check your pattern, please. I don't have it in front of me, so I believe it was a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now what we want is we want this piece to measure 8 inches. So I'm going to take, I can see here I'm off by just over 1/8 of an inch on each side. So I'm taking it off evenly off of each side from those basted on lines. And then it measures 8 inches, and we want to make sure height-wise, it measures 3.5 inches, so if you need to, go ahead and cut it off of the bottom raw edge there, but be super careful because the card slots are in behind. You want to make sure you don't go in so deep that you are accidentally cutting your card slots by accident. I was fine. See? They're safe. Do the same with the other card slot as well. So now that that's done, we want to find the center of these. These are 8 inches, so 4 inches is in the center. Draw a line down the middle. Double check that it is definitely centered. This is very important because you want to make sure your card slots are going to fit once we are all done. So now we're going to just go up the centers here. I'm starting at the bottom, working my way up. Once I get to the top, I'm going to put my needle down, pivot, and go right back down that same stitch line just to give it a little extra security, as we don't want those threads popping as we're using these card slots. All right, so I went ahead and I changed out my main panel because I really like this purple instead. Otherwise it would have been all green. So you're going to match up the 8-inch long side with the raw edges of the card slots for both card slots. So the folded side of the card slots is facing to the center. And then we're going to go ahead and baste these in place. There should be about a 1/2 inch-ish or so in between the card slots, and go ahead and stitch around. So there we go, that is done. Now we're going to take our completed inside tabs here, and we are going to put them on nice and centered on each side. I'm just using my stitch line to eyeball centered mark. It's just very important that these two match up, as we need that magnetic snap to match up in order for our wallet to stay closed. Go ahead and baste those on. So that is done. I match up. Everything looks even. I'm super happy with that. All right, now we're going to work on our bands. So first I'm going to take my zipper band. I am going to sandwich that tab right sides together like this. Clip that in place. Do the same with the other side and the curved band. And we're going to go sew across here, each of these with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And the other side as well. Okay, and once that's done, what we want to do is we want to make sure our seam is pointing up towards those bands, and then we're going to top stitch through the bands to hold that seam in place. Make sure you're pulling this nice and taut, so we need everything to match up perfectly with the exterior piece later on, so you want to make sure nothing is being caught, that seam is pulled as tight as it possibly can. And same with the curve side. Okay, so that is the lining part all done here. I'm just going to double check that my card slots are fitting in with a little bit of room on the raw edges still. Now we're going to work on our exterior. So we have these two pieces. You're going to take your lining piece, you're going to put it right sides together, matching up that curve. Now you're going to notice my fabric shrunk up a little bit, but do you know what? Once I get it kind of centered on here, it's going to fall within that 3/8 seam allowance, so it will be caught. I'm not too worried about it. I'm not going to recut it because it will be caught in that seam allowance, so it shouldn't be a problem. On our pattern piece, there's this little mark right here. You want to draw a line across. For stitching line, we're going to go all the way around this curve to this line and then across here with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Then once you get to that line, make sure you put needle down before you pivot. Again, I am hand cranking around that curve to try to get as smooth of a curve as I possibly can. And then once you get to that line, go ahead and backstitch across. So now that that's done, what we want to do is right in this corner, kind of on an angle, you want to snip into where just before that line was that we had sewn across, as close as you possibly can to the stitching without cutting the stitching. Then I'm going to go ahead and go in with my pinking shears around these curves and trim this down to about a 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Once that's done, go ahead and turn these wrong sides together, finger pressing that seam really, really good. If you're using cotton here, you could definitely take this to the iron and give it a good press. I'm just going to roll it in between my fingers, making sure that my seam is nice and taut and rolled back. Now we're going to go along that as folded inside, and we are going to top stitch. So now we're going to take our slip pocket back panel here, and you're going to see how it lines up at this left-hand curve nice and perfect. That's where I'm going to start and clip them together. Make sure it's nice and straight and lines up right where that little straight edge was as well. I had a little uneven cutting here, so I'm just going to trim that up to even it up. Okay, so when you lift this up, you're going to notice the lining piece and that piece and that back piece line up perfectly along the bottom. So you're going to fold the main out of the way, and we're going to sew across here with a 3/8 of an seam allowance, making sure we are not catching that top panel into the stitching. So fold the top panel up and out of the way, and just across that slip pocket back piece and the lining piece, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and right where these joins are, I'm just going to do some basting here just to hold it in place and around this curve. And as you guys heard, Coco says hi. Mainly doing this because I don't want it to shift. So now that that's done, it's time I want to put in my nameplate. So I'm going to fold it in half like this so I kind of get an idea of the shape of the bag and where I want to place my nameplate. I think I did mine about 1 inch up and 1 inch in, and I'm going to reach into the back here, making sure I'm not going through the back panel. I am only going through that front vinyl here, making my holes where I'm going to put my nameplate. Now you want to make sure that you've left at least 3/8 of an inch here to clear, because that will be our stitching line, and I am good. It kind of gives you an idea what it will look like. Okay, now for the tab, we want to measure in 2 inches in from the right hand side. Do a little mark there. Take your tab so that's the magnetic snap down, and put it right up against that 2-inch line, and we are going to go ahead and baste it in place here. Okay, so that is done. Now we want to install the other part of our magnetic snap. So I'm just pressing down on the snap to get it to indent into my fabric here so I know where I'm going to place it, like so. And go ahead and install that snap in a similar fashion that we did the nameplate, through that exterior vinyl piece only. So that is done. I am also going to put a little bit of Gorilla Tape over top of the prongs there just to add a little extra security and to make sure that it doesn't rub too badly on that lining fabric. Okay, so now we are going to work on the back zipper pocket. So I have my zipper facing here, and my pattern piece, I have cut out my rectangle. So I'm going to trace out this rectangle on the back side of my zipper facing. I'm going to go back in with my ruler because I want these lines to be super straight. So I'm just straightening them out because my tracing is not the best. Okay, and then what we want to do is we want to take this and pin it right sides together along the straight edge of our exterior piece. So now we're working with the opposite end. So match it up along the top, right sides together. And I'm going to take some pins in this rectangle piece to secure this for when we go stitching. It doesn't matter that there's going to be holes in my vinyl here because we're going to be cutting that out. So we're going to take this and we are going to stitch all the way around that rectangle. Okay, so that is done, and I stayed pretty much inside that rectangle on the back of the interfacing there, which is good. From each of the short ends of stitching, I'm going to measure in 3/8 of an inch, draw a little line, and in between those lines, I'm going to drop about 1/4 of an inch-ish across, and then do my little V's out to my corners. Then we're going to take this to the cutting block, with the rotary cutter and scissors and cut out our zipper shape here. So I just go in with my rotary cutter in the center just to get things started. And then go back in with my scissors, cutting right to that line, and then my V's out to as close as I possibly can get to that stitching without cutting through the stitching for all 4 corners. My scissors are dull. I think I need new ones. Okay, and then once that is done, we want to go ahead and stick the facing through that hole, bringing it wrong sides together with our exterior piece. You're going to want to roll the seam really nice. You can give it a good press from the lining side. Now when I do this, I like to leave a little bit of the lining showing because it gives it kind of a nice faux piping look. So I chose to make it so it has a little bit there. Okay, so I'm going to use zipper tape to do my zipper lining zipper panels. If your machine doesn't like it, please do use clips here. I have one of my lining pieces right side up and my zipper right side up, and I'm going to baste these together like so. So again, the lining is right side up and the zipper is right side up. Then I'm going to take my other lining piece and do the same thing with the other side of the zipper. So this is bringing our lining pieces right sides together. So this has our lining right side up and the other end of our zipper right side up again, and baste that in place. Now I always do cut my zipper a little bit long, and that is just because when I put my pull on, it just gives me a little bit more wiggle room if I need to trim some off. So I will now go and trim. Once I press this flat, I'm going to trim my zipper, which I have done here. Now we want to make sure our zipper pull is closing to the right. We are going to put some double-sided tape about in between 1/4 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch away from that rectangle because we want it to be out of the stitching line. Again, making sure your zipper pull is closing to the right. You're going to take the tape off the top part of this, center that zipper in that zipper rectangle, and stick it down where you want it to go on the zipper tape, making sure it's nice and straight. When you're ready, do the same with the bottom side. Again, zipper pull is going to the right. Just making sure my zipper will open and close, and we are going to go and top stitch this in place around this rectangle. I'm pulling my strings long. That is because I don't like to backstitch. I like to tie my threads off so I have a nice seamless top stitch. Make sure your lining pieces are butterflied out and start working your way around. Okay, while I'm here, I'm going to pull on that bobbin thread to pull my top thread through to the back for tying off later. And as we start approaching onto that starting stitch, we want to make sure, if you're doing it without backstitching, that your needle lands in that same hole that started the first stitch. So I'm hand cranking it to have a little more control. Grab onto your threads, do not let them go so you know which thread you're pulling on. Grab that bobbin thread, give it a little bit of a yank. My threads are kind of all tangled mess here, but that's okay. Pull up that loop to pull the top thread through, and then tie off those 4 strands, the 2 starting and the 2 ending strands, with 3 or 4 knots. And then I take my lighter to it as I'm using a bonded thread just to melt it a little bit more, and it creates a little bit of a melted knot. Just like so. Then once that's done, pull the one lining down. I'm going to trim off the difference in length we have here so they are even. And then I'm going to clip together the 2 short sides and the bottom long open side. And we are going to sew those 3 open sides together, using about a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance or so. Across the bottom and up the other side. Again, pulling your exterior piece out of the way. You do not want to be sewing through your exterior panel at all, just the zipper pocket panels. Like so. We have a functioning pocket, yay! And go ahead and trim these seam allowances up to about 1/4 of an inch. You can trim away the zipper facing on top here. This just helps reduce the bulk of the wallet and gets things out of the way of the seam for when we put the two panels together. Okay, so now we need to work on the main zipper panel. So I've taken my zipper tabs, I have pressed them in half, opened them up, and then pressed the long sides into the center and then over each other again. I'm taking my zipper tape, I'm sticking it in between those folded ends like so, bringing it over, securing it with clips. I'm going to do the same for the other side, and then we're going to go ahead and top stitch these in place with an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. You want to double check that you've caught both sides so that sandwich or that zipper tape is definitely sewn in nice as that little sandwich there. So I did get both sides. I'm going to trim up my zipper ends to be the same width as my zipper tape. And also I'm going to mark the center of my zipper tape with some chalk. Okay, now I'm going to take my main zipper pocket linings. I'm going to find the centers of the tops of these as well. I'm going to take one of them right side up as well as my zipper right side up. I'm going to use, just like we did before, some double-sided tape on the top here. Be sure to use clips if your machine does not like double-sided tape. And we are going to match up those center marks. Now, our zipper tape isn't going to go all the way to the end, which is what we want. And what that does is when we go to sew this together, we won't be sewing through those zipper ends, so we won't get puckered corners. There will be a little teeny tiny hole there from our zipper pocket, but that is okay. Trust me, it's much better. Now do yourself a favor and definitely change into your zipper foot at this point. This only takes about 30 seconds, and trust me, it just makes your zippers so much better if you do this. So I've put on my right zipper foot, and I'm going to sew this on with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. Having that zipper foot just helps get a nice straight zipper. So again, my zipper is right side up and my lining is right side up. Making sure my zipper pull is closing to the right. I'm going to find the center of the straight edge here of my lining piece. So again, your zipper pull is closing to the right. I'm going to put some double-sided tape on the top here. Again, use clips if you don't like tape. We're going to put this right sides together with that lining panel, sandwiching that zipper zipper. Nice and centered. And then you're going to love your zipper foot at this point as we sew these together with 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You may have to put your needle down to move your zipper pull out of the way. All right, so now I've pushed them wrong sides together, given them a good press. We're going to do the exact same thing with the exterior piece and the other lining piece, as you see here. We have our zipper pulls closing the same way, which is exactly what we want. Now what we're going to do, we haven't top stitched yet, but we're going to top stitch across here, across the zipper tab, and down the other tab here. So we're only doing that small rectangle, starting and stopping at the zipper tab. We're not going right to the ends. So again, I'm pulling my threads along as I'm going to pull my threads to the back to tie them off, so we have a nice seamless line. So all the way to the zipper tab. Now we're going to stitch across the opposite end of the zipper tab than we top stitched before, which is about 1/8 of an inch away from the last one. Before I get too much further, I'm going to pull my top thread, my starting top thread through, go across that zipper tab, down the other side, across the other zipper tab. And once again, as we are approaching that starting stitch, have your needle, if you're doing it like me, and in that starting stitch, pulling your threads along, holding onto those threads, pulling your bobbin thread, pulling the top thread through, and then tying off those 4 strands once again. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. We're getting so close to being done. So we need you to undo your main zipper all the way. And what we're going to do is start matching our lining sides like so. You want to make it so your zipper tabs are kind of curving towards the lining side, and match up that seam there so we have a nice fluid line of where our exterior meets and our lining meets. So put 3 or 4 clips there. Go ahead and do the same on the other side, matching up those seams so our exterior lines up and our lining lines up, kind of pushing them away from each other. Very similar to doing a zipper pouch. Okay, and then go ahead and clip the lining sides, not the bottom straight edge. We do not need to worry about that just yet, of the zipper lining panel. That can stay open. Just the 2 long edges going all the way down and then down and around that curve. Okay, so that is all done. So what I'm going to do is right where the zipper meets the lining and that, I'm going to go and I'm just going to stitch those little places first because I do not want my zipper to move. That's the one place you don't want to shift in this case. So I'm going to start there just so for 1 inch or so over where our lining and our exteriors meet. At 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, make sure you are not sewing through those zipper tabs. Very, very important. So I still have my zipper foot on here. That allows me to get nice and close to that zipper tab without having any issues. So the zipper foot is your friend. Do the same on the other side. So my zipper foot is almost sitting right up against that zipper tab, so I know I am not running over it. Once you have those 2 areas of concern secured, you can go ahead and sew the rest of the clipped edges with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Actually, I lied. The lining, you're going to kind of start at the bottom here with the 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then as you get to those stitches we just made, have it branch down to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch, jump over to the other side, starting exactly where we had stopped when we sewed that one side on. And on this exterior side, we're going to go all the way around with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Very important that it's an accurate 3/8 of an inch seam allowance because you do not want your card slots to end up being too small because your seam allowance was too big. Once again, I am hand cranking around these corners so I can get a perfect corner. That is a Brandy thing. That's what I like to do. Again, hand cranking. I just have more control this way. Up the other side to where we had stitched where the patterns or the panels join, doing a back stitch. And then jumping over and starting where we had stopped here at that little spot again. This is a really, really good trick that Celine had taught me to make sure that my zipper panels do not shift, and it worked brilliantly. Okay, so now that that's done, make sure everything was caught, make sure everything looks good. I'm going to go in with my pinking shears around these corners and trim them around, trimming my seam allowances down to about 1/4 inch seam allowance, except for where our tab is here. I want to keep as much meat of the bag there just to give that tab a little extra security. Again, I think I need new pinking shears. Once that's done, go ahead and start working at turning this through. Again, this is where I learned this is very hard to turn through when I've done the exterior in all vinyl like I did. Again, if I made this again, I would either do it in all cotton or just do it in a mixture of cotton and vinyl for the exterior, because this was tough. Definitely worth the effort though. Just worked really slow, made sure I wasn't tearing on anything, and worked it through. But man, I got a hand workout. Okay, here we go. Once you get to the home stretch here, make sure you push all of those seams out, push out those corners nice and round. Go in with your pointy thing, a chopstick, whatever you use to point out those corners. At the zipper tabs here, poke them out. This is where you're going to see at the zipper tab there's a little teeny tiny bit of a hole. You want that. That means you did not run over the zipper tabs, and you should have a perfect corner there, which I have. Super happy. So yeah, I just kind of poked my thing through there. Now, if you're all cotton, go ahead and give this a really, really good press. I pressed it from the lining side, being careful not to touch my vinyl. Now I'm going to take my Peltex stabilizer pieces. I'm going to pull my zipper pocket out here, and through the opening there, I have my kind of fusible side against my cotton side here. You want this to sit underneath the zipper pockets. So kind of tuck it in there. This one's a little tougher because we have the zipper pocket out, but we want it to be underneath the card slots. Sorry, did I say zipper pockets? I meant to say we want this to be sitting underneath the card slots. It's actually pretty easy to get in. Put your lining back in, making sure that that Peltex is sitting in between the zipper pocket lining and the card slot, which mine is. Take your time to make sure it's getting right up into those corners. And then once that's done, what we are going to do now, and this is a little bit scary, is we are going to sew straight through the center here. So because we're doing it this way, make sure your bobbin thread is pristine, because it is going to be what is showing. So make sure you double check your tension, backstitch when you start and stop, and sew right on through the middle of your wallet like so. What this is going to do is it's going to close up that zipper pocket in the bottom, which mine is. And that completes it. You snap it together. Everything looks great. And then we're done.
All right, that's it. That's all. What did you guys think about that? It's really a fun make, and it's really not that hard, and it's actually a rather fast sew as well. Yeah, I think I want to try this again, doing it in a mixtures of vinyls and cottons on the exterior. I think it'll probably be a lot skinnier when I do that. Like, it is really thick because of the fabrics that I chose, but that's completely on me. Still, an amazing wallet. I did get it turned through, and this will make somebody happy, I hope, when they buy it. Anyways, if you like this tutorial, please do give me a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. If you'd like to support my channel further, you can buy me a coffee, that's down below. And if you'd like to take one of my live classes, you can join the membership side of the channel. All that information is down below, or you can shoot me a message if you have any questions. Anyways, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye!